so freaking bad. Wrestle me.
Welcome, everybody, to Juice Pro Wrestling, episode 170, Ultra Mega, with the Ultra Mega motherfucking guest this week. He's the former WWE Cruiserweight champion. He is the former two-time X Division champion for Impact Wrestling / TNA. He is the one, the only TJP. TJP, welcome to the Juice Hole, and how the fuck are you, brother?
I'm doing quite all right, guys. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very, very fine, man. Very fine. So let's just
I
right
apologize if I have an echo here. This is my peaceful corner for the day of my house. I normally would be sitting in my office, but I had to tuck the kiddo in there. And they're like a ticking time bomb, one wrong move. And they,
Yep.
Sorry, I think I had a call come in right now. Anyway, I think I'm back.
Oh, good, brother.
No worries.
Hey, man, that's the first thing I want to talk about. You just recently became a father for the first time, right?
Yeah, first one.
How is that going?
Congrats.
Man?
Congratulations.
It's going pretty great. He's a great kid. I don't know how they would usually go, I guess. But, he's not too terribly fussy. Last couple of days he's kind of been, but kind of learning on the fly. I'm a couple weeks into it. Right now I put him in my office and turned the lights down. So he took over my normal domain, holed up in this corner of the house where it's nice and peaceful. So.
Hell yeah. Dude, that's super cool, man. And so you had a child with Aria Blake, who's a part of MLW. I don't know if that's still like a thing or not. Did you guys meet in MLW or what?
We actually never crossed paths in MLW. We not until we were already together were we ever there at the same time. Like I was there when she wasn't, and vice versa. But we actually met the first time at an Evolve show right before I went to WWE. And so we, circled back around, and here we are. Got the family started. And
fuck yeah, brother.
Awesome.
Doing the thing. Much love and respect to you for that, man. It's a trip. It's worth it. I just had another son. He's 16 months old now, and goddamn early on was that kid colicky. So it was, woo.
Yeah, I think maybe he's kind of hitting that this week a little bit. So that might be why he's fussy. Otherwise, he's pretty great kid. He came early. We weren't expecting him for I think a couple more days. So
yeah,
he came. He wanted to get started pretty quick. Just like
right.
his dad.
Hey, so speaking of kids, let's cycle back to when you were a kid, brother, because you're one of the youngest, if not the youngest people ever to be trained and wrestle for New Japan. Am I right?
Yeah. Youngest. I think I'm still the youngest gaijin foreigner in history. I thought maybe I was pretty close to losing it to Nick Jackson from the Young Bucks, because they went over and he was pretty young, like maybe 20, 19, something like that. But yeah, just like shortly after my 18th birthday, I went on my first tour with them, and they recruited me into the dojo when I was 17. It was kind of a trip, you go from English class to business class flights, and all of a sudden they're putting you. It's kind of like, I don't know. Have you ever seen what's that soccer movie, Goal, where it's like
Ladybugs?
Yeah, Ladybugs.
That's actually what I was thinking of.
Like when like somebody's kind of gets into like a pro league for the first time or something, and all of a sudden they go from this normal suburban life to all of a sudden they're on a plane being handed all kinds of gear and money and just all kinds of stuff. And that's just kind of how my life, that's how my life was around that time. Yeah, I'd been wrestling for a few years, but it was all local stuff or across the border in Mexico. So, it was kind of whatever. that was really, they kind of gave me my first big break after, maybe 4 years or so.
Well, that's a hell of a trip to get in, hit up Japan and Mexico early on, if not first in your career, man. Cause and it shows with like, we sitting, watching your match at the last Warrior Wrestling, dude. And I've seen this move done. You do like this fucking Matrix shit, like catch a guy's leg, his arm is going to catch some shit. And you're like doing the fucking robot or whatever. It's fucking nasty. That's right. Bodie.
I didn't want my boxing coach to think that all the slipping rope drills was going to waste. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be a boxer. My heart's not in it. But I was like, I could use it for this.
Dude, it's crazy, man. It's so crazy. It's just weird to watch because it's unique unto you, and that's super cool, man. And it just adds to already you're like one of the most crazy athletic guys I've ever seen in the ring. Which is probably why they tried to stick you with that suicide gimmick. But dude, yeah.
It's funny. I guess I did kind of get stuck with it, but I volunteered in the beginning because I knew they had a rotating door of guys that did it. And I remember I was sitting at home because I was a different masked character at the time, Puma. Yes. And they just didn't really know like what kind of matches and things to put me in yet. So I was just sitting at home and I saw bumpers for Suicide's coming back. Suicide is coming soon. Suicide's coming in, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And I called them and I said, look, I don't know if you guys had a plan. I know that you guys kind of just have been putting whoever in this and nobody ever really sticks. And I said, I could do this. I'm sitting at home. I want to work. And they said, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And one day turned into two turned into three. And they're like, you do this the way we always thought it would look. And you got to keep doing it. And then that's, before I knew it, it was the next 4 years of my life.
Well, and that's got to be super dope for you. Obviously it's a video game character come to life. That always threw me off a little bit because I was like, man, this is something that was made up for this game. Now they're going to try to bring this dude in and he's called Suicide, which, they had Homicide at the time. So I don't think they really gave a damn. And our country wasn't as sensitive as it is now. But I always thought it was fucking weird because I don't know, man, shit like that to me just doesn't seem to work out very well. Like you have this character, right? Suicide. No one knows shit about him other than, these 4 or 5 guys, whether it's you or what, Daniels or Kaz or whoever was, portraying the character at the time. Do you think it was something with them and not like speaking for those guys like Kaz and Daniels, but obviously, more name value outside of that gimmick? What was it? Something also with the other guys who played the character that just weren't getting it or didn't like it because it's like, hey, what the fuck is this shit you're bringing in?
Well, I think it's funny because I remember we were in Houston for a pay-per-view, Destination X 2008, I think. Mm-hmm. And we're about halfway through the show and we're in the locker room. Frankie Kazarian came in, and Frankie's an old friend of mine. I've known him as long as I've been a wrestler from Southern California.
Metal guy too.
Yeah. Christopher Daniels too. I've known him forever. And so we're in the locker room and Frankie came in. They had kind of pulled him aside and had a meeting with him and said, we'd like you to do this character. And he was just getting a chance to start being himself, and he had been sort of put into this like flock type group. And he kind of weathered some storms that like he kind of earned a few badges of courage, so to speak, and he was finally getting a chance to be himself, like Frankie Kazarian. I look like this. I like metal. This is why, and like, then they're like, we'd like you to do this instead. And he was so bummed out. And we kind of sat around and joked because I was on the show as Puma, and we sat around and joked. I think Christopher Daniels said they should just have TJ do it. He already wears a mask, and they don't know what to do with the character. And we all just kind of laughed and said, "Ha yeah." And then I was kind of done after that with TNA for years. I didn't come back for maybe 3-4 years, and obviously they had this rotating door between, Kaz and Daniels and whoever else. And I think, it was probably a combination of their hearts not being in it, because they're their own people and they're older than me. So like we've all been around about the same amount of time, but like as human beings, they're more mature. So they're ready to be themselves, you know. And also they had more heavyweight style. So like I think the company was sort of like, well, we sort of kind of hoped for more of a Spider-Man Deadpool type of thing out of this. And your guys' energy is kind of low with it. You're not interested. You wrestle like heavyweights. And so it's not that it's not cool, but it's just, that doesn't feel right. So when I came in, I was interested in doing it. And I could kind of do anything, I guess. So I did it the way I thought I would. I just kind of did it the way I thought it would be. And, you know, Frankie and CD, like Daniels especially, Daniels is a huge comic book guy. So yes. It's not for lack of, you know, artistic wealth, so to speak. He had all the tools to do it. It's just like there's just such disinterest in it because it doesn't suit him, you know. So I just think it finally landed on somebody that wanted to run with it. So
I think you did the best job with it, man. And like I said, it goes because you don't know shit. The only backstory like you got from that is if you played that damn video game, you know, and that was it. Then next thing you know, it's like he's in the ring. Like, what? Come on now with this, you know. Might as well have Kevin Nash wrestling in his what attire they put him in that game, like a polo shirt.
Oh yeah.
But dude, I think you rocked that fucking gimmick. And as time went on, I mean, obviously, let's fast forward a little bit to you come back to TNA, you're doing more shit now. What was it like to work? Because you were there when Hogan and Bischoff were there too, right? And that's when the gimmick kind of morphed into like Manic, and you were with what was it, the Revolution with James Storm?
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, no, I liked the potential of the evolution of it. I mean, it just like with a lot of things in the company at the time, they were just never really on board fully with anything that anybody was doing. So it just kind of felt like it hit dead ends all the time. Otherwise, I thought all the stuff that we had on the plate and on the menu for it were interesting and necessary changes. And it's funny, you had mentioned like, in a previous point in history, the world wasn't as sensitive as it is today. And I was actually the one that suggested the switch to Manic, because I felt like maybe like right around 2013, we're sort of hitting the tipping point of like this social justice culture really starting to like push their way into like mainstream issues and things. And so I just felt like, and one of the first pay-per-views we did with me as a character was in Boston right after the bombing. And I was like, maybe we should consider changing the name of the character, you know. And I said, I don't mind it, but for your guys' sake, I feel like maybe let's not get too far into it. And then you guys feel like, well, we can't change it now. Let's just cancel the character altogether. I'm like, I don't want to lose the character over it, so let's be ahead of the curve. And
let's be the butterfly to the fucking caterpillar. Let's evolve.
Yeah, well, because like for me, experience dictates that I know that if they're not thinking about it, we might get 6-8 months down the road, and then they hit a point where finally it sort of dawns on them in the middle of a production meeting, and I don't want them on that random day to be like, we got to scrap this character altogether after I had put like a year of equity into it or something. I said, if you're going to change it now. Like, we're about to go into kind of the sensitive city after a tragedy. Maybe this is the right time. So I don't know. I think it was maybe Hogan and Bischoff that thought of the new name. And I said, that's fine. It's as good a name as any if you want. And when they did the unmasking and everything, they also weren't sure what to do with it. And I was wanting to base it off of, there's a monster in Filipino folklore called the aswang. And it's like our version of like the chupacabra vampire sort of thing, like our werewolf. Right. And the gimmick behind it is it's like a vampire who's a shapeshifter and can kind of like always appear differently. And I thought, you guys took the mask off. I told everybody who I was, but you want me to still wear the mask and the costume. but you're not married to the costume, and we all agree that it's time for it to evolve a little bit. It had been that way for 5 years or whatever. And they were going to make me a bad guy at a certain point. So I said, let me do this with it. I'll be me sometimes as TJ, and then sometimes I'll be the monster that this is, and I was going to base it off the Oswald. And it's interesting because it ended up being pretty much what Finn Balor would start doing a couple years later.
Just thinking that, brother.
And that's why I'm such a huge fan of that character. And because, Finn is a good friend of mine, but like, I've always been a fan of that character because that was along the lines of what I was trying to create with Manic, was because I was always a big fan of Great Muta. And I always thought it's interesting that Muta is like this, like all love, happy, not happy-go-lucky, but sort of, it's a very like uplifting feeling you get watching Muta perform. And he's not like a tough guy or like somebody like Ishii or something like that, he's very charismatic. But then sometimes when he's a Great Muta, he'll appear as a giant bug or whatever the fuck,
Yeah, right.
So it's like, I thought that's so cool. And like America doesn't have that. And that's what I wanted to create. And it was a bummer because they never wanted to really go into it. Like I would say it, they would like it. And then they would be like, we'll figure it out later. And it's like, you won't figure it out later. And we didn't figure it out later. No. And so that's sort of why the latest reincarnation of it, I made it clear to the office, is we're going to bring Manic back. Let me do it my way. Like, he'll look different a little bit every time and it'll be special. You don't see him every day. And it's that sort of thing, which is more kind of what we did with it now.
Yeah. And it's cool. And I think you have a better office to approach that with, because I mean, we're talking the Hogan Bischoff era. I mean, I wasn't there, but dude, I watched it. I stuck through the thick and thin, the best and the worst of TNA / Impact throughout the years. And as much as I was a Hogan mark as a kid, it sucks when you see a guy, and I can't put it all on him and Bischoff. You know what I mean? Like, there were other people that were actually running the money people of that company at the time that just didn't have a fucking clue. Apparently the product showed. When you go from, and not to dog, because dude, they've totally finally, as of like a few years ago, stepped out of that shadow, because for a long time TNA was the hot topic just to shit on, and it was like, that sucked, because
it still is at times,
at times, I guess, but I don't really see it anymore. No, I really don't. I mean, I think they've done a pretty good job of stepping outside of that.
Yeah, I think generationally we're getting farther enough away from it. Whether it's them stepping away from it or just simply time and like the change in the company, like for a while it hit such a low that it's almost like seeing a new company debut and grow, because for a while, it was like the visibility was ash. And then the visibility was almost non-existent. But I mean, at that time, it wasn't really like there was any sort of problem.
Was the locker room cool back then in the Hogan era?
The locker room was great. The locker room has always been great in TNA. That's one of the best things I've always thought about it, is that at any generation, it's probably the best locker rooms I've ever been in. But like the office, creatively, it was never like one of those things where like, oh, it'd be so great except for this one guy, or except for these two guys, or this one, corner of the room. Like, it was never like that. It just seemed like stuff would get lost in the ether, so to speak, with it.
Right.
Like
the dark ether.
Like people. Like Bischoff was the greatest dude to work with. He was super easygoing. If I had an idea or a question, I would ask him, and he would be honest to me. And there's a lot of stuff that he wouldn't want to have his hands in. Like, people think that he would control us. If I remember asking him one time, "Hey, I was thinking about this, and this for a finish," or I was like, "How about this, and this for like a character direction on this?" And he's like, "No, you don't have to give me that. That's up to you. You do what you want. That's not what I'm here for." And I remember hearing that phrase from him so many times. That's not what I'm here for. Because he was the opposite of being controlling with a lot of the guys. And I think that there was a lot of times he felt handcuffed, because I think there's things he would like to implement, just having his own business experience with WCW, that he was like, we need to try and do this and the parent company for Impact and the collective would be like, nah, we're not going to do it. And he's like, guys, like, fuck, So I think at times he felt like how we felt, where he's like, Jesus Christ, I want to get something going, but like, we can't, nobody could get on the same page.
Yeah.
And like Hogan too was like literally just one of the boys. Like I remember coming out of the locker room once, because it was like, I forget, we were in Las Vegas at the Orleans, and I remember coming out of the locker room, because at that time we were running arenas, like how AEW is now.
Right.
Like it was for wrestling fans that have only
they were number
kind of
2
come around the last for like 5 years. Like if you've only come around like 5 years or so, and you're like in your early 20s and you haven't been watching wrestling a long, like Impact at that time was like what AEW is right now. Like trying to hit those like
buzz.
Like TV on the road every week, and like they were really trying, like big network on Spike, like they were trying to get over that hump and get to kind of where AEW is heading right now. So I remember we were walking through the arena trying to find where this talent meeting was, and Hogan came out of his locker room, his dressing room, and he was like, hey, where's the meeting at? Like he was just one, like he wasn't in charge of the meeting. He wasn't doing the meeting. He had no bullet points for it. He wasn't there to dictate anything. He was literally just a guy with gear in his bag like anybody else. And he was always down to earth and easy to talk to. That was my biggest takeaway from that, is like, you're literally the Babe Ruth of what we do. And just in general, you're on the short list of human beings that are recognizable in the world. Like in
Michael
the last
Jordan.
like in the last 30 years, like there's like Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, and Hulk Hogan. You could put them on any continent, on any
maybe Bruce
sidewalk.
Lee. Could we put Bruce in that?
Yes. Yeah. You could put like there's like 5 guys probably.
Right.
You can put them on any street corner and people will know.
Multi-generational too. That's what's insane.
Even if they don't even like the platform that your life is built upon, they don't have to watch wrestling. They know who Hulk Hogan is. You know what I mean?
Let me put it to you this way, TJP, not TJP. I don't know how big of a, I know you're a big gamer. I don't know about your action figure and toy obsession, if there is any, but I'll tell you this, you are big fucking time if every bullshit knockoff action figure they make out of anything, whether it's football, basketball, or wrestling, looks like you, then or a video game character like Fei Long. Come on, in Street Fighter.
Oh, yeah.
All the countless guys in fighting games that are based off of Bruce Lee or Hulk Hogan or Michael Jordan, That's how you know you're big time.
Yeah, exactly. Like Mexican action figures that are just stuck like this, but they have like the Hogan Fu Manchu,
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, they were great, and the other scapegoat a lot was like Dixie, for example. But she was the sweetest human being ever, and like always accommodating if she could. There's a lot of stuff obviously it's not in her hands. So like some people, if they had like a problem with their contract or a problem with like a pay dispute or something, like they'll bring it to her and she'll address it. But it's like she doesn't literally pay you from her purse. So like some people would be like, if she can't fix it, like then it's like fuck her. And it's like, well, that's like that's not. It's her company.
Money,
that's Panda Energy. It's her company. It's her company, but that's not her department. Like she's gonna have to have somebody else fix it for you. And a lot of times when these reputations get created, and it's they're WWE anything.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's honestly like the boys can't handle being told no, or they are upset because the problem isn't fixed as quick as they want. Like whatever it is. Like sometimes it's really as simple as that. Like even like dealing with Vince, like I wasn't the most important guy in the world, but like I dealt with him often, and I saw how he dealt with guys who really were important. I've seen him chew out like big stars in Gorilla, and I've done a terrible job for him at least once or twice, and he didn't chew me out at all. He was the nicest person in the world. And I've met with him and hadn't been rejected on creative stuff. I've seen other people get rejected. And he's not nearly the type of caricature that you make him out to be. And I feel like a lot of times, because people in his position, they're not going to rush into the public spotlight to defend themselves when a narrative is created. But like,
they got time for that.
but like, you know, guys like my peers, like us, like we'll spend all day in the public spotlight complaining.
Yeah,
but we're in that forum alone. So like when guys create that narrative, a lot of times it's just somebody who couldn't handle being told no. Yeah,
same thing. You're at a regular job and you're pissed, and you go to your buddy like, "Hey, Bill, man, this fucking guy go suck a huge one, man. This fucking bullshit. I tell you what, I'm fucking leaving. They took our ribs.
Yeah, they really mistreat me. Blah 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 blah. And you'll never believe what he just said to me. And it's like you went in there and asked for like every weekend off, and he said no. Like that's like
In Vince's world, there's no fucking days off.
Yeah, what boss is going to give you every weekend off?
So yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of guys that'll knock on his door, and it's like, I got this great creative pitch. 6 months of this, and this, and I become world champion. Like, okay, if he tells you no, and he probably is going to, then when that guy goes back to the locker room and tells 10 of his friends, he just chewed me out, didn't even fucking listen to me. Well, dude, like, he just said no. That's all it was. You just didn't like it, you know. Right. So a lot of times narratives, you know, TNA, WWE, a lot of stuff, it's just guys there's no accountability for themselves in a way, you know, like you're a cog in the wheel. You got to accept when sometimes your answer is the right one. I always knew that, you know, it's not my money, not my investment. So I was always going and being prepared to be told no or something like that.
So what was it like the transition, and how did you, excuse me, what was your in with the E? So we're saying after the Manic run and all that stuff, did your contract just expire?
CWC.
Right.
Yeah.
With TNA, and you were just trying to explore other options? Because I think there were, if not most of the damn roster at that time, like when you left, I'll give it to you this way. There's a lot of people in WWE right now that want to flee just because I think really, dude, they've done it all. You look at like, dude, mark my words, at some point, I'm not going to say soon because I don't know the business logistics of her contract, but look at like Charlotte Flair, who's done it all. Right. Needs a fresh place for fresh matchups like you used to get back in the day with old school wrestling. You know, everybody would go everywhere.
Well, guys work too much now. You know, that's the other thing. Like,
good point.
Like generationally, think about this. Like, okay, so I don't know, like how old is the room in there, just consensus wise? I'm 30. I just turned 37.
We're all older than you, brother.
Yeah. Okay, so like we all grew up on the Hogan era, and we fell in love through the Attitude Era and all that. Now think of all the top guys from then until Cena, right? Like you think of like Steve Austin, right? Dude, we feel like, okay, he's a Rushmore type of guy, one of the greatest of all time, had a great career. He was in WWE like 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same with The Rock.
The Rock, like 4 years. Shawn, 3 years on top. Brett, like 4 or 5 years, maybe. And that's considered long. Hogan, maybe a little more, but he's literally the benchmark for greatest of all time. You know, not until Cena, who was like the anomaly, like 10 years. This is why people like, when people like who are on, I guess, my side of the line, nobody has a bad word to say about Cena. Everybody adores him because it's unreal how long he's been able to do it. So like a lot of times, like now, like wrestling fans are like, you know, like they think something is ended prematurely, but it's like, dude, like most of the time, 4 years was like a full career. You got in, did your thing, and you went to the alternative company, tried to get another 3 or 4 years there, and then that was it. You're done. You know, you've made your money, you chill. And so you think about that. And then also like Steve Austin wasn't wrestling every week on Superstars. You know, no. Hogan never
wasn't either.
Yeah,
right.
You had to go to live events to see
I don't think so, brother.
You never saw him wrestle on TV except for
free.
Like Saturday night's main event, sometimes on big cable specials and pay-per-views. That's it.
Yep.
Now, guys, like somebody like Charlotte, it's not even that she's amassing so much stuff real quick, like title reigns and things like that. She's wrestling every week.
Yeah.
So it's like how much content creatively before not you physically, but your character artistically gets burnt out. you can only read so many Spider-Man comics before you're like, God, I need a Black Panther or an Iron Man or something. Exactly. I can't read Spider-Man anymore,
Lobo.
So I think that's a big thing now is like some guys they run out of creative steam so easily now because there's just too much wrestling.
Yeah, that's too much.
That's accessible to everybody at once.
Oh, yeah. Right. But I think that's why it's a good thing that, like you said, these guys had short amount of periods of time on top for, minus the anomaly that is John Cena. That's why they need, it's good for the workers. It's good for the companies and the fans, just the wrestling community as a whole. My personal opinion, I believe, and you're a perfect example, you're not locked down to anybody. You can go anywhere you want. There's always fresh matchups, fresh creative, fresh ideas. You have to have that. Like a guy like Randy Orton, dude, I don't care what he does in WWE at this point. I'm not knocking him and his work ethic, but I don't give a fuck because, dude, he's been there for 20 years.
What else? What else do you want to see him do?
And if he showed up at AEW or anywhere, it would flip the fucking world upside down. You know what I mean?
It's one of the reasons why I feel like lately it's a blessing in disguise when, with the way that they've had so much talent. I don't think it's a blessing that they had so much talent because then it kind of creates these weird problems. Inevitably, you have to let them go. At the end, it's a shock. Yeah, it's a shock to their system because they've built a life, maybe raised kids, or predicated upon having that job, and then they get cut out of nowhere. So that sucks. Right. It sucks. There's a lot of things that becomes problematic, like 3 or 4 steps into it. But one of the great byproducts of it, especially with the lack of live events, not that the lack of live events is great because you want the guys to make money, but guys getting paid great guarantees and then they don't wrestle once every 3 months, maybe. Fuck, dude. Like if I was a performer, I'd be like, great, you're saving me so many matches. Like, I'll be worth more to you for more years if you don't fire me. But it's like, if you still have me on the roster, there's matches that I'm going to do for the next 3 years that you would have done in 6 months.
Yep.
But since you're not putting me on Raw every single week or on NXT every single week, like Ciampa, for example, there's got to be so much fresh stuff for him right now that they can slowly pick and choose. Okay, let's do him and, Archer. Let's do him and this guy next. And it's like he didn't burn through that because he's not been wrestling every single week. So for some guys, I felt like, this is kind of a blessing in disguise. It's taking them back to like the Hogan era where they didn't get seen all the time. I just think like they need to find a way to manage that. It's hard because it's a different game now. It's weekly television. Yeah. So
like you said,
guys, I got a terrible cough allergy right now.
Okay. No worries.
All good, man. I think, like you said, it's a total blessing because people, especially the ones and they're super fucking talented like yourself, can go anywhere. And there's gonna be I don't want to say like a bidding war. Maybe that's the wrong phrase, but opportunities. Especially for a guy, you did work a lot of other places before you got to the E. So maybe doors are open back up. But even for the ones that didn't, that established a name, and we all know companies like to pull, big names from WWE when they're gone because it just makes sense. It's fucking great. So like, and I get what you're saying because I'm also a family man. Bodie's also a family man. We have kids. I understand that like all of a sudden if you lose your job, it's wrestling, but it's still a fucking job. It's how you provide. Yeah. That's horrible. But if you are a talented person and a person that is mentally well aware enough upstairs to be like, all right, this is just a fucking bump in the road. I'm hitting up, I got buddies that work for New Japan. Let's see, MLW, ROH, like.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of these people, I'm happy to see them go because they weren't utilized or they, if they were on TV, it just goes back to they weren't utilized properly.
Sure. A lot of the stuff, and I don't catch a lot of the stuff that narratively, like socially, like, I've always been so tuned out to that sort of thing, which is so weird because we live in a generation where that's everybody's lifeblood, and I'm just so the opposite. Like,
True.
But one thing like I did catch, or at least I'm aware of it. Like, I feel like Mick's criticism lately was pretty spot on. Like, I feel like the scheduling for a lot of the guys and not being so full time would be perfect if they artistically were engaging with these guys better than they are now. And I think AEW's got like AEW is a great contrast because a lot of those guys don't wrestle. Like, I mean, some of the main guys are on every single week, but look at some of the people in the company that were there from like day one. And like, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I haven't seen this guy in like 3 weeks or whatever, but there's still characters. Yeah. There's still these characters that you're like, I really love this guy. I can't wait to see him again. Like, I remember growing up, like I was like, oh, I love Jake the Snake. I didn't see him every week. But every 3 or 4 weeks, he might have a match on Superstars or something. And I'd be like, oh, awesome. He's back on again, you know?
But he was an attraction, like almost like everybody in that generation. So if you didn't see him all the time, I mean, it was almost better. That's the way the business worked. You know, like Hogan, they were attractions because Andre the Giant back in the day, you know, like, dude, put asses in seats, and you don't have it, but you just remember that experience you just had with Jake the Snake, and you're like, oh my God, like I need to see him again next week, and you don't get it. But and then they give him to you a couple of weeks later or whatever, and they're still engaging him creatively to where it's like it hasn't lost anything. So it's like, you know, but WWE creative doesn't do a good job of that, and they haven't for a long time, and they're just too big. You know, there's too many people on the roster.
It's yes. And I think they've set unrealistic expectations for wrestling fans who don't understand that all these, all of them, not just WWE, but all the companies, even indie companies. I mean, they're all, you have to look at them all like television shows.
Yeah.
And people, I've said this before, but like people don't understand when they hear the phrase or the term television show. Like if you tell a wrestling fan, oh, WWE is like a television show, I guarantee they'll yes you to death and cut you off and be like, oh yeah, because you know they're more about promos and the wrestling isn't so much wrestling. That's not what that means. That literally that's not what it means. It's The Simpsons. It's The Walking Dead. It's a television show based on 5 to 10 main characters, just like any television show. Now a wrestling fan doesn't understand that because to a wrestling fan, every person matters. But on a television show, if you're, you know, Hans Moleman on The Simpsons,
yes,
you don't really matter. There's Hans Moleman fans. I love Hans Moleman.
I love Hans Moleman.
But I know every single week there is zero chance the episode will be based on Hans Moleman. You know, I just might get a few great Easter eggs, you know, from him or who's the grumpy old guy with the long beard, you know?
Jasper.
Oh, the bald dude.
That's Jasper.
He's staring at
Jasper.
That's a bad
one.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
Yeah, so like that's the thing, and again, like what I was saying about like creative before, like guys will go in and pitch something, they get upset when they're told no, and I remember watching these guys and like also like picking people's brains, you know, picking Hunter's brain or picking, you know, other people that are like, you know, producers or executives in the company, talent relations people, and kind of understanding like they have to go in every year at a certain point and pitch next year's WrestleMania to the next year's city. And when they have to go into these meetings and meet with Snickers or meet with Fox and NBC and renew with USA or whoever the case, you know, all these different things. And they go in there and they meet with all these investors or producers or people. And they have to say, just like The Simpsons or Walking Dead or anybody else, they have to say, this is our television show. Here's a poster. The show is about these people. It's about Roman. It's about Brock. It's about Undertaker. It's about Becky. It's about Charlotte. It's about Sasha. Like, here's our cast. And there's only going to be 5-10 people on that because that's Marge, Homer, Lisa, Maggie, Bart. That's what The Simpsons is about. This is what WWE is about. So no offense, but if you're TJP or you're Kalisto or you're No Way Jose, the show's not about you. You know, so it's like a lot of people. It's like the Kevin Nash and Bret Hart thing. It's not about you, motherfucker. Like that's kind of what I would feel like with my peers. Like, guys, you can't go in and knock on Vince's door thinking you're smart, like in say October, and you're like, oh, I'm getting ahead of the curve. It's way before Rumble. It's before Mania. I can get this pitch in, have a great like start of the year. Maybe they'll think of something. I'm early, you know, bro. They knew what next year's Mania was last Mania.
Right.
They're not going to change they've already sold that for $1 billion. If they change that, which they won't, but if they did, now their neck is on the line when they have to go back into that room, and Snickers and Pizza Hut and the venue for the stadium in the city for the next Mania, Fox, they're like, we bought Brock Lesnar. Why are you giving us this motherfucker?
Yeah.
And
Right.
Who the fuck is TJP?
yeah, like Vince Hunter, these guys have to be in there and justify why they gave, you know, me or whoever this thing because we pitched a great idea. No, they're good. And that's the other thing too. When when guys get upset, and I've been in this situation before, tons, pitching a story or an idea, and then it gets retrofitted to like Cena or somebody that's like a main character. And then people get so mad, oh, they stole my idea. But it's like, bro, they could not have done that with you. They can, but you can't, you're not really on the show. Like, no offense, but you're not really on the show. Like Lenny and Carl aren't really on The Simpsons. They're kind of on The Simpsons, but they're not really on The Simpsons, you know? And it's it's like with Walking Dead, for example, fans of Walking Dead, they might see in one episode, this guy, you know, a new character, just like a bit character cameo will come in, have some great one-liners and help Rick save the day and do some badass shit. And they'll be calling into Talking Dead afterward, like, oh, that guy was badass and blah, 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 blah. Walking Dead isn't going to change the whole show to be around this guy just because he got so over with the Walking Dead fans. At best, they might say, all right, next season, let's bring this guy back for like episode 4. He'll come back and do something cool.
See what we could develop.
Yeah,
like Morgan.
We'll throw something in to make the fans happy. They really liked him. Maybe we'll shoehorn him in as much as we can. Mm-hmm. So every now and then, when Vince will give you something sweet, like you know, a big, say, I don't know, like a Daniel Bryan run or like Kofi Mania or something, like he's deterring from what he sold for $1 billion already to give people what they want for as long as he can. And people are like mad that they don't get that every day. Dude, he deserves more credit for he's putting his neck on the line. Yeah. Like he has to go into the perspective,
dude. That's he has to go into these Mikey Gordon would be flipping shit right now because he's a huge Vince fan.
Like I agree, he has to go into these board meetings and look these guys in the eye as if he stole millions of dollars from them because they're like, where the fuck is the Undertaker? You know?
Rest in peace. I'm retired.
So, and that's just the thing is like, I think the company and every company probably, but you know, especially with like WWE, like people just like, they deserve more credit for trying to still make it a wrestling company.
It's not a wrestling company though. They're not. They haven't been for 20
this goes
years.
For this really goes for everything. AEW is the same way. Like, there's only gonna be like 5 to 10 guys that are really AEW. Everybody else, and it's gonna happen. Like they're gonna end up releasing guys. People will be mad, and they're gonna not have guys on, and people are gonna feel underutilized, and people will be mad. But it's like that's the truth. It's that's how it is. Even an indie show that isn't even on TV, they're still going to operate like a television show because they have to base it around a handful of people and sell it to local sponsors that will just invest in your bullshit live show at a Knights of Columbus Hall.
The key words, TJP, that you just said, or sell it. They have to sell it. It is, at the end of the day, boils and ghouls, wrestling fans, it is a business. And I don't care if you're the fucking lowest indie in the goddamn nation or you are WWE. It is a business. And especially if you're like WWE.
It's all about like the group investing in it too, you know. Exactly. That's where they're making money. It's not like no company really makes money off of ticket sales. Like they do, but they don't. Like live events really is money for the boys. Like that's merch. Their bonus. That's their bonus pay. And for the company, it's advertisement. So those fans are like, oh man, I saw The Rock versus Triple H tonight, and The Rock didn't lose his title, but he almost did. Fuck, he might lose it at the pay-per-view. We got to watch the pay-per-view. Well, of course he didn't lose it on a live event. but but that's the point. And they're not thinking that they're making, company lifeblood money off of selling 8,000 live event tickets. They're just paying the boys with that. The guys are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. That's how they're getting their extra money and how they're able to like have these great, comfortable lives with their families is that. But what they really give a fuck about is when Fox gives them $1 billion. That's the money.
Yep.
An indie show selling 200 tickets, like if they think that is where their money's coming from, they probably won't have show 3, 4, and 5. But when they sell it to like a local car dealership or like a local like food truck business or people that start giving them money, and it's like, oh, here's all of a sudden they have $10,000 to put on the show. Fuck the $2,000 you're making off of ticket sales.
Shout out to Warrior Wrestling. Eric and Steve know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, like you're just like your tickets are just like making sure you can pay like some of the big ticket performers and stuff like that. Like you're really making money off of how like people that are making it a group effort to like spread the word and advertise.
Yeah.
And
dude,
I like the
it's business.
Yeah, I like how you're putting it too. I think as wrestling fans, we tend to focus in on certain wrestlers and be like, oh, this is my guy, this is my girl right here.
Or marks, man.
Yeah, but you're not looking, like you said, not looking at the big picture and who these guys have to answer to every day. WWE has to answer to Fox or these sponsors and stuff, and that's where the money's coming. And I love the perspective because, we're not looking at it as a TV show, or some fans aren't looking at it. So if someone like, I'll throw a name out there, like Matt Cardona is not getting the TV time and people are like all on him and he's over with the crowd. Well, they're not marketing to him. They're looking at, you said, Snickers, Pizza Hut, or whoever, so I think we get caught up as, we focus in on these characters, we focus in on these wrestlers, but then we forget what it's all about. And you kind of making that analogy with the TV shows, I think that's great because it opened my eyes up a lot too.
Well, it's like as a performer, like I started kind of connecting obviously I'm picking people's brains too. And like, hey, what is it like when you have to go into an investor meeting, or what goes into, like, when do you guys plan next year's main, like when do you create, like I would go to like, say the WrestleMania Superstore. I remember one time I would shoot content because the merch guy, like I had a good relationship with different production people. Cause like when you're like me and you're 205 and sometimes you're just not on, you spend 8 hours in the arena talking to the crew. So, the merch guys, I would tell them every time, like, hey, if you need content, I'll host a little like Mania, like Superstore walkthrough. Cause I know you can't really get Miz or somebody who's busy, and I'd look at these posters and things and I'd be like, when did they make this? When did they take these pictures? Like I would say, that's an old picture. Fucking
team player, you.
Like, and so I started kind of understanding like this stuff has been set in motion so far back. So then, exactly. Like it is exactly what you said. Like somebody in say like Matt Cardona's position, where they got all this talent, a lot of support. They have a great position in the company theoretically. Like they're working all the time. They're not at the top, but they're not like at the bottom. Like they want to pitch something and get something going. And they can't seem to get over the hump. And I see tons of guys in that position. They'll pitch something, and like I said, they think they're smart and they think they're doing it the right way. But it's like, dude, they've made this poster, they've sold this show. You're not going to change it. Like that's it. And it's not even just, it's not your limitations, it's their limitations. They can't change it for you.
Right.
Like, and we just don't,
because there's money involved and it's not their money.
Exactly. They have to show return on that money they've been given. They don't have that return yet because you're trying to pitch an idea for a show that hasn't happened yet, which is where they're trying to get the return from. So they swap you out for what they've already sold. The system is broken. And if it doesn't work out, that's their neck on the chopping block. You think it's bad for you that you might get fired. You're $300,000 a year to this system. The guy at the top is a billionaire. If his head rolls, nobody has a job. So, like, of course, he's going to tell you no. And that's not the worst thing, though, because you still have a job. Like, you're still going to wrestle. It's not a big deal.
Sure.
But I think that with wrestling fans, the perception, the reason why it's tough is because, like, there's a certain, like, disconnect in like medium flexibility. And by medium, I mean like platform flexibility. So like look at like comic books. There's an infinite amount of characters, just like wrestling, like hundreds of comic book characters, hundreds of wrestlers, and people key in onto the ones they really like, you know, like an Orange Cassidy fan, or like, you know, maybe a TJP fan, or like a Tyson Kidd, or whoever, right? And obviously John Cena, Roman, like there's fans of everything. Now, comic books, that's an endless medium, right? You could print as much as you want. And if you buy it, you buy it. If you print it and it doesn't sell, it didn't really cost you any money. You know, it's fine. You know, you just maybe don't write as much if it doesn't sell, but it's still there. It's still available. Wrestling, it's not like that. There's only a finite amount of TV time. There's only a finite amount of investment. So imagine if comic books are relegated only to movies. How would that look? So if you're a fan of, you know, Quicksilver, you're not going to get them when it's just like a 4-movie series of the Avengers.
Brother, it took me almost 30 years to get Carnage.
It's like, sorry, but Iron Man is John Cena, and they've already sold that. They're not going to swap it out for fucking Iceman. Like, no offense, but that's what it is.
Damn it, Bobby gets no love.
I was going to keep my mouth shut the whole time, but I promised Wallace I would derail this interview with this question. I have on so many frequent occasions shit on WWE, not as a company that I want to fail. I grew up on them. I love them. Like when we talk about Hogan, half the time anybody mentions anything about Hogan, I get fucking goosebumps. He's got that sort of attachment to my...
No, I feel you. I haven't watched wrestling after like 1998. I can't. I have like no interest in modern stuff because I love the era that we grew up on.
Yeah, it was awesome. So because of the show, because of Juice Pro Wrestling, because of this podcast, because of Bodie, because of Wallace, it has reinvigorated that love for wrestling that I had as a kid and I have now. So, you know, now I try to watch everything as much as that is possible, given the crazy amount of content. But I shit on WWE a lot. And sometimes when we talk about it, somebody's like, well, maybe they should go out of business. Maybe they should this and that. Like we have these conversations. And I guess my question is, how long does it take to adjust? Because they are still like, when you see the new clips from new stuff happening, I have zero interest. I find it boring. But there are still hundreds of thousands of fans that fill those stadiums. There are still people that we know that are diehard WWE fans. And from our perspective, I'm like, well, man, you like boring shit. I like fun shit. That's not, I don't think that's fucking fair. But
give a round of applause for that comment.
How long does it take to adjust? Like, how long does it take to adjust? Does it take a year? Because I keep hoping the competition, the controversy, the Twitter babies,
as in like the company adjusts to the creative.
I want
landscape.
them to. How does a company like that do it?
So now I've thought about this in regards to like what I was saying before, like a wrestling company or any of them, they're like a television show, right? But see, like a television show, and this is the other thing too, again, back to the other thing we're talking about as far as like people's shelf lives, like think about a television show. If you get 10 seasons out of a television show, that's like all-time great.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Fuck, you're the X-Files. You're
American Horror Story.
You're something
Even
that's
Walking Dead.
Yeah, you're something that's gonna, like, generations from now, people are gonna be like, oh yeah, that was a huge TV show back in the day. The Twilight Zone, like fuck yeah,
right?
You know? And it's like even when it's not around, people will remember it. And so it's like you think about that, and you think about to another point too, like I'm splitting too much, but I'll touch back on this in a second. But creatively, you guys got to remember too, like this is weekly episodic TV with no seasons. Mm-hmm. So like imagine how hard it is to write for
dude. It's like the show every week.
Imagine writing for the Tonight Show.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's tough. That you only got to write maybe 5 minutes of content, and then they'll get the rest out of the interviews. And you only got to write one show per week. So imagine writing 5 shows per week. And
that's why we do a lot of interviews.
And it's at least an hour of content. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount of unrealistic creative burnout that so like if I watched what was going on right now and I saw a storyline, I don't know what's going on. I know Randy and Riddle have been doing something together. I don't know what, but let's just go with that for right now. Abstract, so to speak.
Mhm.
So if I were to watch and I'd say, oh, Randy and Riddle are doing this, this, and this, I would have done it like this. And maybe I have a really good idea. Maybe it would be way, way, way better. But for me as a viewer, like, I'm kind of tuning out probably half the show, and that allows me to creatively like develop this interest in this story because maybe those are two of my favorite wrestlers and I would have done it like this, and maybe that's a great idea. But if you're in the writer's room, you have to think of the whole show, and you have to think of next week. And every single Friday, you have to stand in front of the same billionaire and pitch him something. And if you don't have anything, you're done. Like, and that's your life every week for like the rest of your life, as long as you live, as long as you work there. You know what I mean? So realistically speaking, there's going to be like a fuzziness of focus there if you have to be in that room and do that. I remember The Simpsons, I think it was The Simpsons or Family Guy, had this table reading process. They said that they would, you know, they write their episode for the week. They would do the table read, say on like a Thursday, but then they would do it again on Friday and then on Saturday and on Sunday. And so everything that was really funny on Thursday was still pretty funny on Friday. And then it was kind of like, fuck, I hate this show on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they were like, dude, like, we don't even know if this is funny anymore. But that was a great filter for them because they would say by Monday morning or whenever, you know, deadline was, if most of their stuff was still funny or like felt right, they knew they had something because they've been burning themselves out on it all week. And I thought that's kind of brilliant because like, as a writer, like a viewer can think of something great on the spot all the time. Sure, of course, but they're not going to hire new writers every week. That's not feasible. So like they have to roll with a team that's going to not always get it right. But that's just a creative part of it. But as far as like wrestling as a television show, like I said, television show, like 4 seasons is pretty decent. 10 seasons is fucking all time great. So you kind of figure like at a certain point, a television show just runs its course and then you just never see that character ever again. And it ceases to be a show. So for WWE or like an AEW, something that aspires to be around for decades, 10, 20, 30 years, at a certain point, you know, like Steve Austin has his run and then the show that was the Steve Austin show kind of ceases to exist. It becomes the Rock show. And you kind of could see it like WWE, for example, became a totally different show. Like Hogan for 5 years. Think of that. That's like it was a show for like 5 seasons and then closed up shop. Then this whole brand new show called WWE was a television show for like 4 seasons. Bret Hart was the main character. Then it sort of closed up shop. Then it was like a totally different show as Steve Austin, and then it closes up shop. So how long does it take for that to happen under that sort of thing? Who knows? Like they kind of have to allow, that's when they get to have fun and say, who do the people really like? We can get behind them. They could do the Becky Lynch thing. Like, okay, fuck, this was awesome. Let's run with this. WWE, however, now has kind of, in my opinion, reached this different realm where people are more interested in the logo than they are the players. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, if you like WWE, you're a Yankee fan. You're not an Aaron Judge fan. Right?
True.
You're a Yankee fan. And so they know that. They're well aware that like casual fans in a way can be disposable. They'll come in, they'll see it, discover it, get wrapped up in the excitement, not know what's necessarily good or bad entertainment wise. And that's subjective. So I guess nothing is really good or bad. We like who knows what's good or bad, right?
Right.
But they know that they'll come in masses because they've heard about WWE. They know what the logo looks like. They know what to expect. They know this is what gave the world Hulk Hogan at one point in time and John Cena and whatever. And they'll like what they like. And when they've had their fill of toys, t-shirts, and shows for 3, 4, 5 years, they'll grow up and they'll be replaced by an entire new demographic that's going to repeat the process and not know any different. Unfortunately for us, that means the show doesn't evolve the same way as it used to. So I think in a way that's sort of why it's like, maybe you move on. Maybe now it's like you move on to the AEWs and New Japans of the world because they still operate that way. WWE does not.
Right. Was that your fucking question, Stretton?
Got him.
Yeah,
Fucking asshole.
I
I
got
can't
some
believe he
follow-up
said
ones, but I'm gonna
something.
shut up about it. It was a good
You got
answer.
some
But I mean, I
follow-up
think,
ones?
you know,
Follow-up?
no, yeah, please. Because I think I mean, you're on the right. I think your mind is operating the right way. Like the way that you're thinking is like, well, when does the cycle like begin again or whatever? And I think that you're on the right track because you probably know it's not going to. You just don't necessarily want to accept it quite yet, or you're not ready to decisively say you think you're right about it, but you are right about it. Like it's probably never going to be that way again.
It's like when the circus comes to town.
Yeah.
As a kid, I went to it. It was Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, and I grew out of that. But my kids might recognize it,
And that was the end of part 1 of our interview, our fucking journey, our fucking hangout with the one, the only TJP. That's right. You might have seen him in MLW, you might have seen him in Impact Wrestling, you might have seen him in ROH, you might have seen him and remember him as the WWE Cruiserweight champion. It's on like Donkey Kong, boys and girls, because in episode 2, we dive even deeper into the depths of the wrestling business and everything that you've ever wanted to know with one of the best talents going in the world today, TJP. Get ready for part 2 of Ultra Mega with Juice Pro Wrestling, Bruiser Bodie, Sweat the motherfucking Savage, and the Juice himself, and the one, the only TJP. Follow us on all socials. Be sure to subscribe, hit that like button on YouTube, share. Tell your friends. And guess what? Just like I told you, it's coming up. It's September. Buy our shirts, prowrestlingtees.com. Official store / JP Tees. JP Dub. Killer designs on there. Sren's really proud of the Lucha design. Yeah, let's just be honest, good and evil. Let's just be honest. It's a great shirt. Buy it. We got so much killer shit coming for you guys. Be ready for part 2 next week. Wad 'em up.
Don't miss it.
Wad 'em up.
Don't miss it.
Wad 'em up. Wad 'em up.
You gonna do sex to me? Did you like that video? If so, be sure to hit like and subscribe and check out more killer content from your boys at Juice Pro Wrestling. Whoa, yeah!